Most people who try to quit an addiction fail within the first few days, and they spend months, sometimes years, believing the reason is weakness. It is not. In the next 12 minutes, the owl is going to show you the actual mechanism behind why you keep going back. The biological layer, the psychological layer, and the identity layer that almost no one talks about. Once you see all three clearly, you will understand why everything you tried before was fighting the wrong battle. For most of human history, addiction was treated as a moral failing, a sign of weak character, a lack of discipline, a personal flaw, and that belief did enormous damage, because people who were suffering physiologically were told the solution was simply to try harder. We now know that is wrong. Addiction is not a character flaw. It is a physiological condition that physically changes the structure of the brain and alters the way it works. This distinction matters, not to remove responsibility, but to point it in the right direction. Because if you believe you are failing due to weakness, you will keep trying to be stronger. And stronger is not what breaks this. Understanding is, you are not addicted because you are weak. You are not addicted because you lack willpower. You are addicted because your mind has been conditioned into a loop that was built to repeat itself. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to understand. Because if you do not understand your patterns will control you. If you do not observe your mind will imprison you. And so, the descent begins. Let us start at the foundation. Your brain has one job: to repeat whatever brings fast relief, and to avoid whatever brings discomfort. That is not a flaw. That is a feature. For most of human history, that system kept people alive. It is called the reward pathway. Its original purpose was to reinforce the behaviors that helped us survive: eat, rest, connect, build, protect. When you did something that supported survival, your brain released a small burst of dopamine, a signal, a quiet satisfaction, a message that said, do that again. That system is still running inside you right now. But in the modern world, it has been hijacked because addictive substances and behaviors do not produce a natural reward signal. They flood the reward pathway with dopamine at a level 10 times higher than anything the natural world provides. 10 times. That is not a slight elevation. That is an overwhelming surge that the brain was never designed to receive, and the brain responds the only way it can. It adapts. It begins reducing the number of dopamine receptors available. It releases less dopamine on its own. The baseline drops. So now, the same substance that once produced an intense high produces only a fraction of that feeling, and the things that used to feel satisfying in ordinary life start to feel flat, empty, not enough. This is called tolerance, and it explains something that confuses so many people. Why does the habit stop feeling good, but you keep doing it anyway? Because you are no longer doing it for the high. You are doing it to feel normal. The brain has recalibrated its entire baseline around the substance. Without it, the system feels depleted. With it, the system feels just about okay. That is the trap. You are not broken. You are overloaded. And when you are overloaded, you do not choose what is best. You choose what is fastest. There is one more biological layer that most people never hear about, and it may be the most important one. As addiction deepens, something changes in the balance of power between two regions of the brain, the cortex and the subcortex. The cortex is responsible for deliberate decision-making, for weighing consequences, for choosing the longer path, for saying no when no is the right answer. The subcortex is responsible for habit learning, for automatic behavior, for impulse, for the deeply grooved patterns that fire before the thinking mind has even had a chance to respond. In a healthy system, the cortex has significant influence over the subcortex, but repeated addictive behavior shifts that balance. The influence of the cortex weakens. The influence of the subcortex strengthens, and the result is something that changes everything about how we understand addiction. The behavior stops being a choice. It becomes a reflex, not like choosing to go for a walk, like flinching when something moves towards your face. By the time your conscious mind has registered the trigger, The urge is already halfway to becoming an action. This is why willpower so often fails. Not because you do not care enough, but because the part of the brain you are trying to use to resist the habit is being systematically outweighed by the part of the brain that has made the habit automatic. You are not fighting weakness. You are fighting a reflex, and you cannot think your way out of a reflex. You have to retrain it. Now here is something most people never consider. At the psychological level, addiction is not about pleasure. It is about avoidance. Avoiding stress, avoiding uncertainty, avoiding pain, avoiding responsibility, avoiding the weight of your own emotions, avoiding silence. Think about the moments when the urge hits hardest. It is rarely when life is going well. It is when something feels heavy, when something feels unresolved, when you are tired or bored or lonely or overwhelmed. The habit is not the thing you want. The habit is the door you have learned to open when you do not want to feel what you are feeling. This is why quitting feels unbearable at first. You are not fighting the habit. You are fighting every feeling the habit was trained to hide, and no one warned you that those feelings would be waiting. Now we go deeper, into the part of the mind where the real patterns live, the subconscious. This is what the owl calls the burrow, the place beneath the surface where your habits are not choices. They are scripts, your triggers, your urges, your automatic reactions. They were programmed long before you ever stopped to question them. Some were installed by your environment, some by your experiences, some by years of repetition so consistent that your mind simply accepted them as part of who you are. And this is where the deepest layer becomes visible. You are not just addicted to the behavior. You are addicted to the identity the behavior reinforces. Sit with that for a moment. The inner voice that says, I need this. I cannot function without this. This is just how I am. Those are not truths. Those are scripts. And here is what makes them so powerful. Scripts do not feel like scripts. They feel like reality. They feel like your own thoughts, your own voice, your own nature. But they were built, and what was built can be rebuilt. So when you try to quit with willpower alone, you are trying to override the behavior while leaving the identity completely intact. And the identity always wins, not because you are weak, but because identity is deeper than behavior. Behavior lives on the surface. Identity lives in the burrow, and the burrow does not respond to motivation. It responds to understanding, structure, repetition, time. This is the real reason the same habits return no matter how many times you try to stop them. You are removing the action without addressing the roots. You are cutting the branches of a tree and wondering why it keeps growing back. The roots are still there. The identity is still there. The subconscious script is still running. So what does actually work? You begin with honesty. You stop framing this as a war against weakness, and you begin seeing it as a recalibration of a system that was built for a different purpose. The habit was never the enemy. The habit was a solution to a problem your nervous system did not know how to solve any other way. And the path forward is not destruction. It is replacement, rewiring, rebuilding. You do not become free by fighting who you were. You become free by building who you are becoming. And that process has stages, not one dramatic moment of clarity. Stages. The nervous system needs time to recalibrate. The subcortex needs new, repeated evidence before it updates its automatic responses. The identity needs new proof before it will shift. That is not a sign of difficulty. That is the nature of genuine change. And anyone who has ever broken a deeply rooted pattern will tell you the same thing. It did not happen in a day. It happened in a direction. You are not powerless. You are not doomed to repeat the past. You simply have not been shown the full picture of what you are working with. Now you have the first layer, the biology of why your brain prefers the shortcut, and why the behavior stopped being a choice long before you realized it, the psychology of what the habit is actually hiding, and the identity layer beneath the behavior that keeps pulling you back no matter how hard you try. In the next video, we go one step further. We map the exact loop your addiction is running, the specific sequence that fires before you even make a conscious decision, and the precise points in that sequence where the loop can finally be broken. That video is already waiting for you. The owl will see you there.